One Is Hell is the 11th episode of the 4th season of Cheers, directed, of course, by the wonderful James Burrows. And there will be spoilers, as always, as I go through the episode. And I also want to apologise in advance if I pronounce it as Don Juan at any point, me being a Byron enthusiast, by which I mean Byron is my favourite person ever. His poem is pronounced Don Juan. There's a whole reason behind why that's the case. But because obviously I talk about Byron a lot, I'm used to talking about Don Juan. So if I do pronounce it that way instead of Don Juan at any point, I apologise. But this episode, One Is Hell, is really entertaining, and we have some really, really great moments, particularly with Sam and Diane. It starts off with Norm quizzing Carla with some trivia from this big book of trivia. Really great fun. Woody asks her a question. He thought he was being quite clever with the question, and he was. And Carla retaliates by squishing his nose. It's really good fun. And also, up until this point, we haven't had that much interaction between Carla and Woody. We also haven't had that many opportunities for Carla to make fun of Woody, the way she makes fun of everybody. She doesn't really make fun of Norm, usually because when Norm is there, Cliff is also there, and Cliff is the one who's being made fun of. But certainly it's nice to see her treating Woody this way. It feels like he's definitely one of the gang by this point. And then Cliff comes in, and Cliff's part of the narrative is very brief. It definitely is padding for the main part of the narrative, but it's quite good fun. And normally I go through everything chronologically, but I will just kind of sum up Cliff's and Woody's very briefly, and then we'll get in with the main point of the narrative. Cliff has grown a squash that looks like the map of Hawaiian Islands. And this relates or connects to a previous episode where he grew something that looked like somebody. I won't spoil it, just in case you haven't seen that episode, but it's definitely something we could expect of Cliff, and people are not interested in this, and then a reporter comes along, and I really, really laughed when the reporter came in and he said he's looking for Cliff Clavin, and I just thought that was absolutely brilliant. Of course, he meant Clavin. He's writing a story on eccentrics, not on squashes that look like maps, and Cliff's not interested, and I really enjoyed Cliff's part of this. Woody's part, we also get a little bit more, where he does really well with the sports trivia with Carla. I thought that was really good fun. But definitely the main attraction for this episode is the relationship between Sam and Diane. Because Diane is trying to write a paper for her human sexual behaviour class. And she decides, against her better judgment to begin with, but Sam convinces her to let him be the study. And Sam definitely doesn't really know what he's getting himself into. All he knows is that Diane's going to ask him questions about his sex life, and she's going to write a paper about it, and Sam's kind of excited about this. And we learn pretty quickly that this paper is really good because her lecturer, Dr. Lowell Greenspon, played by Kenneth Tigar, comes into Cheers and says it's brilliant, it's almost guaranteed to be published, very well done. Diane's very excited, and what I found to be really amusing is that Dr. Greenspon told her that the only thing that might prevent it from being published is that her subject is so near to a perfect example of Don Juanism that readers might not believe it's true. Which, of course, is pretty entertaining because we, the viewer, know that it is real. Sam is a real person, and honestly, I think by this point, Sam is actually changing and he's starting to mature and grow, and we see this a little later on, and I'll talk about that when we get there. But certainly Sam from seasons 1 and 2, and maybe even season 3, he is basically almost a blueprint for Don Juanism, and it gets even funnier because Dr. Greenspon said that something would make her paper even better, and that's if she could find one of the subjects, or conquests as he called them, who were so, in his words, gullible to sleep with Sam. And of course, again, we the viewer know that Diane is one of these so-called conquests, and Diane's facial expression was just absolutely brilliant, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I also love that it shows that people are not always black and white, because Diane, one wouldn't think that Diane would be the kind of person to fall for this Don Juan character. But we see that actually, well, as we know, she did. And similarly, Sam, or the Don Juan figure as we see in Sam, is not necessarily going to be attracted to intellectual women, but he was. And I like that it kind of highlights that on paper, everything is black and white. People fit into this box, or we can categorize this way. But as we see with Sam and Diane, it's not actually as straightforward as that, which I really like. And Sam still isn't really aware of what the paper actually says and how badly it paints him as a character. And he actually suggests that after their talk, the class comes over as a kind of field trip to Cheers to meet Sam, the Don Juan character. And the class comes over and Sam gives this talk, clearly still having not read this paper. And Diane, to her credit, stops Sam and takes him into Sam's office, and she tells him, she reads a bit from the paper and tells him that this isn't what she feels about him. It's just her thesis. And as I said, it's not as black and white as this is who Sam is. Sam is Don Juan. He's the Byronic hero. But when you get to know Sam, as Diane did, there is more to him than that. And you can't just shove him in this Don Juan box and say that this is who he is and that's it. But also, he does tick a lot of those boxes. And the bit that I was alluding to before, where we see Sam having a moment of maturity, is where he accepts the words that Diane is saying and realizes that actually, yes, while it might not all be black and white, a lot of what she has written is true, or at least was true. And the fact that he's not overjoyed by this description is a sign of emotional maturity. And the fact that he's willing to test it with Diane is a sign that he feels like he has to prove something, which again, I feel like Sam in season 1 would not have cared less about proving this to anybody. But he does. He encourages Diane to sit on his lap, and he's trying to prove that they can have a relationship that isn't sexual. And it goes well for about 3 seconds, and then the conversation starts to get a little heated, and there is tension between them, and I love it. I love the fact that Sam and Diane are friends now, because for quite a while they couldn't be in the same room together. They are definitely friends now with a non-sexual relationship, but this tension is beautiful. I won't say what happens with Sam and Diane's relationship going forward because I don't want to spoil anything, but I still love them as a pairing. And I think it took me a while. And there were times when I didn't love Sam and Diane. I think mostly when they were arguing, I didn't love Sam and Diane. But when we have moments like this, I just find it to be so delightful. So it's a very interesting episode, very thought-provoking. The story with Woody and with Cliff, absolutely fine for padding. But it is an analysis of Sam's character and also a little bit of Diane's as well. I think it's really fascinating and really entertaining. And Don Juan Is Hell is a really great episode.